Hi everyone, my name is Necati Sönmez. I am a graduate student at Çanakkale 18 Mart University in English Language Teaching Department. I've conducted a research study for one of my MA courses, which is SPSS Applications Language Teaching Research course. And my study was about the democracy in ELT, actually. And I explored the in-service EFL teachers' democratic values and attitudes. Okay, let me share the outline with you. First of all, I'm going to briefly touch upon the introduction and literature review part, and then I will move on to explain methodology of my study, and then I'll share the findings of my study, and then I'll discuss and conclude the presentation. Well, first of all, introduction part involves the humanistic evolution in English language education. You know, we begin with GTM and then we continue with CLT in the undergraduate program. I mean, we all know this. And that is a humanistic evolution, actually, because we get to see more modern approaches and techniques in English language education. But then, again, we need to refer back to what John Dewey said, actually. According to him, a democratic education is based on the freedom of the intelligence. I mean, the democratic education was related to the freedom, I mean, being free from power relations. So, but do we believe that the schools at his time were some kind of limitators, let's say? I mean, they were limiting the students, both the students and the teachers at that time. But still, it's a debate, actually, again. When we look at the Butts, well, he says that what schools teach from a democratic perspective might end up promoting corrupted norms. Actually, this might be true because Butts says that it is the teacher or the school itself that will teach the content through a democratic perspective. But this democratic perspective can be manipulated because those who hold the power would have the power to act upon such things. For example, maybe a teacher teaches a content through a humanistic perspective, but then again, if that teacher is culturally biased, for example, then he or she might have prejudices towards the students who come from diverse backgrounds. So this might not end up being a democratic classroom anymore. So, and Apple also says that democratic versus authoritarian. So, both the democratic teachers and the authoritarian teachers try to hold the power on their grasps. I mean, they try to change the education for their own goods. And again, when we look at the literature, as you can see, there are pre-service and in-service sections. Well, for pre-service studies, it is indicated that quantitative studies show positive results. And that Kasimi finds out that contextual factors or national discourses might affect the democratic values of pre-service teachers, actually, because this study was conducted in Turkey and the participants mostly mentioned the Atatürk's principles, actually. And then for in-service section, Collins, Hess, and Lovery state that fostering the relationship between teachers and the students was the democratic aspect of the democratic classroom. And also, there should be a active learning, not traditional. And actually, we can refer to Fairey's banking model of education here, because it contains mainstream education, and which is traditional, actually. Well, for aim and research questions, I have 3 research questions. Well, first one focuses on what the in-service EFL teachers' democratic values and attitudes are. Secondly, I try to explore the significant correlation between the in-service EFL teachers' use of teaching experiences and their perceptions of democracy and democratic values. And then I try to uncover the perceptions of in-service EFL teachers on democracy at school environment. So I asked them to give definitions on democracy or give brief explanations towards how to become a democratic teacher. So this is about the third research question. For methodology, I can say that research design is mixed method because I use both qualitative and quantitative means, I mean instruments and analysis. For participants, I have 62 in-service EFL teachers, 47 are female and 15 are male participants. Sampling is convenience sampling, as stated by Dernier. Well, convenience sampling is used because I could reach those 62 teachers without a problem. So that's why I used convenience sampling. So they were easy to be accessed, actually. Data collection instruments, I have one scale, which is a democratic citizenship scale, which was created by Yildirim and Turkoğlu back in 2017. And then follow-up interviews and hypothetical situations were formed to collect the qualitative data. Well, the reliability of the scale is actually good because, as you can see, Chrome by alpha values 0.78, which is good, actually. Data collection procedures, it is sequential explanatory design because I first collected the quantitative data and then analyzed it. And then I tried to collect qualitative data because I formed interview questions and hypothetical situations related to the quantitative data. So that's why I first collected a certain kind of data and then analyzed it, and then I turned back to the qualitative data. And data analysis is SPSS is used obviously for quantitative data, and then inductive content analysis is adapted for qualitative data. Well, findings. I'm not going to summarize all the findings I've found. I'll just touch upon the most important ones. Well, let's begin with the first research question. As you can see here, these 6 means are related to each factor in the scale, which are actually summarized here. DR is duties and responsibilities. DRE is democratic rights and equality. DP is democratic participation, and so on. As you can see from the table, mean values of the first 4 factors are actually good. I mean, well, 4.58, for example, for mean DR, and DRE is 4.56. So this means that the students agreed with the items in these factors. So they were about duties and responsibilities, democratic rights and equality. But then again, when you come back to here, mean GC, global citizenship, it is 3.69. So students did not see themselves as democratic participants. So they did not consider themselves as global citizens. And also, finally, there is a 1.87 mean score related to one of the factors, mean code, culture of democracy. So this is because most of the statements in that factor were actually negative. So that's why it is very low. So I'm not going to focus on everything here. So these are the descriptive statistic findings, actually. If you can see at the first 3 at the top, you can see that they have really highest mean scores, like 4.79. And they are about what? The DR scores, which is duties and responsibilities as stated here. So like every individual is responsible for protecting the heritage, should take responsibility, and has equal rights. So if you can look at the bottom, you see that the code here. So again, it was like 1.87 here. So that's why it is very low. I mean, everyone just strongly disagreed with these items because they were like, women should not enter politics, political leaders should give privileges to their relatives, prejudice towards different religion, and so on. So these are basically the descriptive statistics findings. Well, for qualitative findings here, I'd like to touch upon the negative findings because they're more interesting. as you can see later on. Culture of democracy. If you think about culture of democracy, I found that there were prejudices towards different religions and cultures. I mean, for example, one of the teachers said that nobody has the right to choose his or her mother, or nobody is lucky enough to be a Muslim. But then again, if you refer back to here, prejudice towards different religion and ethnic background, they all received 1.55 and 1.48. So the participants disagreed with these items, strongly disagreed indeed. But then again, if you look at the qualitative data, it's not like that. So it is contrasting with each other. If you look at the democratic rights and equality, again, it is a quote from another participant. Men and women are not naturally equal. What makes men and women equal is their rights. Again, democratic participation not favored by the two teachers, and you can see their, how can I say, the quotes. So they did not want their students to join in such peaceful protests against the government itself. And then again, values of citizenship, oppressed Syrian students. So one of the teachers says that if a student speaks to him in Arabic, she said that she would speak English in a way that these students won't understand when they try to speak to her. So this way they won't speak Arabic again. So actually, these are all contrasting findings. So it's all interesting. For the second research question, is there a significant correlation between the in-service EFL teachers' years of teaching experience and their perceptions of democracy and democratic values? So if you look at the table in the left-hand corner, we can see that there are no significant correlations between these two variables, actually. The teaching experience and all the other, gender and all the other subcategories of the scale. So, which is sad, which indicates that it's not related to the democratic, having a democratic value was not related to having a lot of teaching experience. So, well, then again, there are some significant correlations, and you can actually see them on here, right side. So I'm not going to read all of them, but these are all related with each other. These four factors in the scale were correlated with each other. There were significant correlations, but it's only natural because they contained items that were really similar with each other. So maybe that's why they were correlated too much. Considering the third research question, how do the in-service EFL teachers perceive democracy at school environment? Well, again, I provide some information on the qualitative data I've gathered. So definition of democracy, most of the time, the teachers stated that the democracy was a system of governance where everyone is equal, where everyone can speak whatever they want. So freedom of speech. But one of the participants focused on equity and said that it is, well, not every context has the same opportunities. So that's why he focused on the term equity rather than equality, because some contexts require more than the others, he said. So which is really interesting. Hearing this from an ELT teacher is really a good thing for me. And then components of a democratic language classroom and democratic language teacher roles. So, the most emerging codes were natural communication, respect towards diverse opinions, and consensus. Creating classroom rules together with the students and being tolerant. However, there was again a negative finding here. This quote is said by a participant in the interview. If something is to be done, we, the students and the teacher, make decisions together. Although my students' thoughts are important to me, I make the final decision. So again, she provides the environment for her students to discuss the classroom rules or activities to be used in the classroom, but then again, she decides it. So it's not democratic at all. So it's really contrasting finding again with the quantitative data. Effect of context on EFL teachers' democratic values. Well, there were most of the time, teachers said that being a language teacher at eastern parts of Turkey was not a difficult thing for them. But one of the teachers said so. Well, he said that there was a lack of common language, and there was lack of instructional materials, and there were cultural differences, and the differences in each family's conditions were huge. So according to him, these were the factors that enabled him to become a democratic EFL teacher in the eastern parts of Turkey. So the context affected that teacher negatively. Well, discussion and conclusion. Well, the quantitative results are similar to the previous studies, actually. They all yield positive results. I mean, the quantitative data only. And the reason for such prejudices in teachers can be the result of their long-held beliefs about certain groups of people, like, for example, Arabic people, as I've presented to you earlier in this presentation. And then the teachers value the Western identity that Bulgarian student might bring in the classroom, but not the Eastern identity or Arabian identity that the Syrian students might bring with themselves. So, well, the teachers were asked in the interview that whether they would behave the same to Bulgarian and Syrian student, but they said, yeah, why not? But when you look at it, they behave negatively to Syrian students, but they accept the Bulgarian students. I mean, they try to learn more about the Bulgarian students' culture in the hypothetical situations. So that's why the Western identity seems something superior to them, we can say. And fourthly, the teachers' political ideologies and religious beliefs can be a huge indicator of how their democratic attitudes can be affected. That's true because, some of the findings were related to the political ideologies and religious beliefs. As you remember, some of the teachers did not want their students to join in the protests against the government. And one of them said that men and women were not equal. So maybe this is something religious she believes in. And fifthly, democratic attitudes are not dependent on age or experience because there were no significant correlation. And sixth, in a classroom where power relations exist, a democratic learning would not take place. I mean, I've also talked about this. One of the teachers says that she would have the final say in what is to be used in the classroom. So when the teacher becomes the sole authority in the classroom, well, we cannot talk about democracy at all. Well, thank you for listening, and see you.